From the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I am very pleased to have with me, joining from the US, Tim. Tim, thank you very much for joining the show today. The way I love to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves, so the floor is yours.
Well, perfect. Hey, thanks so much for having me on. Really appreciate it. My name's Tim Tutt. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Night Shift Development. We build a data analytics product called ClearQuery. Appreciate you having me on today.
Thank you very much again, Tim, for being here. So this is something I always love I'm curious to know what, was the motive for you to be interested in this field of data analytics and then, later on to establish your own company. So if you can little bit tell me about the journey that led you to here today.
Sure. Yeah. So, I had a long background as a, computer science major in college. My first job out of school was working at a company called Endeca, which was a search and discovery solution. That was a company that I worked with right out of school. The entire intent was, how do we help people filter and find interesting value in data? I worked on behalf of that company with some government clients and was doing implementation for large scale. How do we find needles in haystacks type thing? And that's really what started the journey on data analytics in particular. I'd been kind of in the tech field for a long time, but this got me a little bit more focusing on data analytics and search and discovery type things.
Yeah, great.
I kept rolling.
Good, Tim. So Tim, now everyone says everything is about the data, and I'm trying here to simplify it because sometimes I have in my audience people who might not be familiar, not very tech oriented, although it's a CTO show. But I love to always to take one step back and highlight. And of course, I have now the expert with me today. So first of all, why actually we need to have data analytics? Why it's not like a something, okay, it's good to have, it's something you have to have.
Yeah. These days, data analytics really provides a major competitive advantage. So if you look at any kind of data that we collect, because we collect massive amounts, things on user behaviors, things on buying patterns for individuals, how are people attacking our systems, for instance. All of these things kind of roll up into data analytics, where we're trying to look at and find interesting patterns so that we can make better decisions at the end of the day. So if you look at pretty much any industry, you're collecting some amount of data and you're using that data to make a better decision to improve your business outcomes. So while a lot of people may look at things as kind of, hey, this is my intuitive approach for how we drive business, we also need to have very specific data-driven insights. So, hey, more people in this category, males, females, between this age range, buy these types of products. So here's how we need to actually, here's how we need to market to those individuals. Here's what we need to do to get them to be enticed to buy other things.
Great. I know, Tim, one area you like to discuss, and it's something part of, I would say, the mission that you are on, is to simplify, in other term, democratize, data analytics to be accessible for even non-technical users. So what inspired you, to pursue this, and how do you see that can be changing the landscape of business intelligence?
Yeah, absolutely. So, that started for me Back in my days, again, supporting government customers, I played a role where I was the middleman between several hundred analysts and their data. I was going and writing queries against supercomputer. They'd come and ask questions. We wash, rinse, repeat, give them more answers. They have more questions, more follow-ups. And really, at that point, I realized that, hey, I'm kind of the holdup here. Between myself and the 13 others that we were working with, we had a small team that was supporting a lot of analysts. So really, we wanted to solve this problem where we got ourselves out of the way, but it also enabled us to kind of go work on harder problems. So myself and my co-founder started the company really to focus on that issue. At the end of the day, I believe technology is meant to make things easier for people. And if it's too complex where only your most technical users can use it, we're not doing a good enough job here. So ClearQuery really is designed on that principle of democratizing data analytics and making it simple for any user, no matter their technical skill level, to get value from their data. That means your subject matter experts don't have to go and learn a bunch of technical skills to, find the interesting patterns, develop the charts, or make those data-driven decisions that they need to make.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, especially in times like we are living at now, it's crucial that everyone is able to, to access these without, spending a lot of maybe time and money on getting, to the, I would say, expensive stuff. But at the same time, I know you also focus on helping and empowering the data stakeholders, right? So first, let let's discuss like who are these stakeholders, right? And how the solution that you develop can help them. Whether I know you're gonna mention who are the stakeholders, but mainly I mean maybe the data analysts, scientists. So how you can empower them, and what I would say business outcome they can expect once they are empowered to deal with the data.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're looking at data scientists, data engineers in particular, ClearQuery does provide a lot of value there for those more technical users. You're talking about accelerating the time it takes for them to immediately triage that data. So if you're in the data science profession, if you're looking for interesting patterns for you to go and build your models on top of, ClearQuery helps you find those without you having to go and write a bunch of code to do that or do a lot of experimentation. We're going to highlight some of those insights for you right off the bat. As a data engineer, and we actually do this for ourselves. First time we get a data set, one of the things that we look at is, hey, how clean is this data set? Do we have data that is mismatched across the board? In one case, we got a data set where it said, hey, there are 63 states in the United States. And obviously that's not correct, but that was because the data wasn't clean. It was hand jammed in. So we knew we needed to go and clean that field up for people to actually be able to get value from their data. Helps to solve this garbage in, garbage out problem at the end of the day. So for data scientists, data engineers, for your more technical users, it really does help to drive some of those behaviors. If you really start looking at application developers or product managers, you can start analyzing user behaviors in your application in a very simple way. What features are being used the most? Where are people encountering the most errors? So that we can drive from there. As you move a little bit down the stack to your data analyst and your subject matter experts in a particular arena, maybe it's in marketing, maybe it's in sales, they can start to ask these questions in very simple ways so they can get the value that they need. Hey, how many deals did we have that are coming from, let's call it Facebook.com in the last 30 days? Well, what's the makeup of the individuals that were coming from there? And are those things converting? What sites are we getting the highest conversion rates from? And they're able to ask those questions without needing to go and learn SQL, without needing to have days and weeks of training on a particular platform.
Yeah, that's great. And out of curiosity, Tim, do you can deal with any kind of data source?
Yeah, so we have a couple of immediate data sources that we work with out of the box. If your data is in Elasticsearch, we plug directly into that. We can also pull from SQL, MySQL, SQL Server, but you can also upload a raw CSV or Excel file and start getting value from that right off the jump. If you have a data source that we don't already support out of the box, we can go and build a connector for it, and we're continuing to build those connectors as we're building the tool here.
Yeah, that's very cool, really. And because again, I was telling you before we started this episode that I work in consultancy, and sometimes I hear a lot of initiatives, and the question number one, I hear, okay, what's the data source that you are using? And
Yeah.
nowadays it's like very fragmented, I believe. Um, so back to bridging the technical gap, like of course, this is something you are doing with the team, to bridge it, as we say now. But of course, there are some challenges down the road, right? So, are the major challenges you see when you try to get this, non-technical business users to start to, understand, the value, and what are the approaches you use to address these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. When we first started the company and when we first launched ClearQuery, one of our core features was this feature that allowed people to ask questions in plain language. Ask the question in English, hey, what is the breakdown of traffic by referral source type thing? And it comes back this beautiful chart, and you're able to start interacting with that and drilling in. Now, one of the first immediate pieces of feedback that we got from a very early customer was, hey, great that I can ask these questions of my data, but I don't always know what to ask. I don't even know where to start. How do I move, forward with that? So as we kind of took a look at that, we took a bigger step back and said, okay, well, what if users didn't have to ask questions? What if we could surface interesting insights for them to start looking at right off the bat? So there's a capability inside of ClearQuery that we call automated insights that does just that. From the second you upload your data set, it starts doing some quick analysis and highlighting interesting, statistically relevant data points that you can start drilling into. Hey, did you know that the top referral source is Facebook, and it's about 30%, more often than Twitter.com or something like that. So you'll get those insights right off the bat.
Great. Now, out of curiosity, like, do you use NLP, natural language processing, Graham?
We do. So we started doing this. We started the company in 2017. So it's kind of been a core of our product offering here. But yeah, we're doing some natural language understanding to identify the intent, and then some entity extraction to figure out, okay, what are the things that we need to go and build the right query against the data source, run that against the data source. And as that data comes back, we're able to kind of automatically determine the right type of visualization to show to that user.
Great. Now, maybe I'm sure that you are prepared me to be asking this question with all this hype and noise, or whatever you want to call it, about AI. You know, because people started to mix things up, right? Between what AI actually is, and generative AI and data analytics. But now, with all what's happening around us, and we started to see, for example, Microsoft with the co-pilot approach, and we start to see like everyone trying to leverage the data. So where do you see, the intersection between, and of course, a lot of part of it is data science, which everyone I think knows. But from your perspective, Tim, what are you seeing, the intersections? Where are you seeing things that are, headed in the future, especially when AI, comes to data analytics?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, all of these things really, they're very much so all about the data at the end of the day. Data drives any model that you're building from a machine learning perspective. So when you talk generative AI, those are it's trained on massive amounts of data, massive amounts of text. How do we do predicting what the next right word is to answer a question? It feels like magic at the end of the day. It feels like your generative chatbots that are out there actually know the answer, but it's actually just doing simple math on the back end here. What's really interesting though is, with OpenAI and the rise of, language models across the board, large language models across the board, we're starting to see kind of these new trends of how we can leverage those things for data analytics. So as a part of our own roadmap internally, we're looking at how we can identify not large language models, but smaller language models that we can embed in our application for focused specific tasks. Things like, hey, I've got a raw PDF document or a bunch of Word documents, and I want to, get some analytics out of that. Well, sure, we can do the standard metadata extraction approach and help you analyze your file types, but that's not as interesting. What would be more interesting is if we can extract things like people, places, organizations out of that data for you so that you can analyze based on those bits of data points. Or how do we do things like translation on the fly inside of the application so that you don't necessarily need to know the source language of your data, and you can ask questions and drill in and still get those answers, in an appropriate way. So there's a lot of intersection with, how AI is kind of how, machine learning models, I'll say, because none of this is really true AI. How these things interact with data analytics in particular.
Yeah, just also like again, you know what, Tim, if someone comes from engineering background, you're curious by design, I would say. So when I was trying, the first time when OpenAI they released what they used to call it the code interpreter, now they call it data analysis actually. So I tried to give some open source data sets, and I started. I'm not a data scientist by any means, but I took a course back in the days about Python and these things.
Sure.
So do you think like here, for example, the AI can help us actually, and especially again back to the point of non-technical business owners of or line of business, so maybe it can help them to ask the right question when they deal with the data. So for example, I gave a data set about the real estate in Dubai, and they have to open data, the transaction and so on, and then it started to suggest to me what kind of things it can do. So do you see this as something can go more in the future and become also kind of autopilot kind of thing? So you don't need the layer of the data. I'm not sure it's data scientist, but the layer which is before the data scientist.
Yeah, no, I think that's actually a really interesting point, and one of the things that we're also diving into. How do we get to these automated recommendations? How do we predict the questions that people are going to want to know before they even ask the questions, just based off of the data that they have? Here are the things that you should care about immediately. So short answer is yes. I think we're still a little ways away from that, though, and in a large part, it's just because some of these things require a lot of deep internal business knowledge, and depending on how that business operates, it may or may not use certain techniques or use certain approaches for how they run against things. Doesn't mean you can't do it in a general sense. And I think AI is going to help with those things. One of the big challenges we have, though, is understanding how these models work under the covers. A lot of the things that you see today are very much so black boxes, which means that we're running into this issue of, hey, how do I know how you came up with that answer and if that's actually accurate? Did you give me an answer that I can validate, or is this something that I'm just going to have to trust blindly? And that's something that we really need to advance before people can rely on those automatic recommendations.
Yeah, great one, Tim. I like this approach. But when I was preparing, I saw that you have, like you did software security also before. And so, of course, like everyone concerned when it comes to data is about how we secure all this. So how important is also like while dealing with data to keep it, secure, and you make sure that you conserve the privacy and all these things. So if you can shed the light a little bit on these important aspects also, which usually people they don't talk much about.
Yeah, absolutely. No, keeping data secure is immensely important. This is actually one of the big challenges that we're seeing right now with OpenAI and ChatGPT. you had this issue very early on where people were feeding their corporate data in, and there were
Yeah.
two major leaks that occurred, where companies' private confidential information was being leaked to the public because they were feeding this into ChatGPT. Now, what the immediate knee-jerk reaction is from most companies is to say, "Hey, no one is allowed to use ChatGPT. No one's allowed to use OpenAI." And I don't know that that's necessarily the right answer, but it does become a bigger question of what data do we want to share with these open platforms. One of the bigger challenges with things like OpenAI's setup is, hey, it's a open API. It requires a lot of resources to run. So in order for you to leverage it, you wouldn't be able to kind of pull that behind firewall without spending a lot of money on a number of different resources. So people have to find this balance between what's actually secure, what do I really care about, and what can I do to get value from these platforms at the end of the day. So one of the things that we focus on with our product in particular, you can deploy it behind firewalls in public private clouds. We never have to see your data at all. You don't ever have to share anything with us, and that's in large part because of the techniques that we're using for the natural language understanding and intent understanding. They aren't massively resource intensive. So it allows you to have a lot of that security and privacy in your data. I was actually just reading an article last night where the new chat assistants that ChatGPT has open. There are certain ways where you can ask questions and say, "Hey, I want to get the raw data that the author used to build this in the beginning," and ChatGPT will return that for you. So lots of concerns with how you start to lose your competitive advantage that way. If you're losing the data that you use to build out this model, that becomes more of an issue for you in general. So, data security and privacy is a major concern in all analytics solutions, and it's something that we always recommend that people take a big, deep look at when they're trying to determine, what platforms and what tools to use in their organization.
Yeah, and by the way, Tim, just as a side note, because of this approach that you took, I can tell you, like, if you one day you decide to expand in my area here, they would love it because although like we have the hyperscaler, they have local data centers and so on, but in some, and of course, I know it's in the States, it's the same. In Europe with the GDPR, it's the same. For some industries, the data should stay within. Yeah, so this is big plus, I would say, for you. I can tell you this right away. Um, but like you just one thing about, because you mentioned something about the search and you mentioned elastic search, right? So is this something that when you deploy the solution, that can happen in the background? So again, I don't need to be a wizard or an expert in Elasticsearch and all these terms. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. So what we're doing, and we provide, as we're setting it up, we'll set up that Elasticsearch cluster for you as a part of an implementation, and it's usually a very quick implementation. But one of the things that we do is we're actually translating the questions that you're asking into Elasticsearch queries, and everything that we're doing, we're building that on the fly for you, so that you don't have to even know what Elasticsearch is, or even how to spell Elasticsearch at the end of the day.
Yeah, great to know this, Tim. Now, I want a little bit to shift gears, okay, and talk about the entrepreneurial aspect of your journey, Tim, which is honestly, it's very, fantastic results. And knowing that you bootstrapped the company and achieved 160% year-over-year growth. So, I'm sure this is the dream of every founder out there. So, like, first, why you decided to bootstrap and not raise any funds in the beginning? And the second, thing, what were, if and just I'm asking this question to shed some light also for other founders who, the first thing they think about before doing any other task is going and raise funds. So if you can little bit, give us some hints and strategies that worked for you also as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So starting the company, and when we were starting the company, both myself and my co-founder, we wanted to kind of maintain control over the direction, the technical direction of what we were doing, and also kind of the internal strategies for how we were going to build up the company. And when you take on money, one of the big challenges that you have is you now have other bosses, and those other bosses are very focused on growth, 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 and growth at all costs. We wanted to grow, but we wanted to grow in a way that was scalable for us, that enabled us to kind of say, this is what we want to focus on now. We can focus on the customers, and we don't have to focus, we can focus on solving these problems that those customers have and build interesting, cool technology to solve those problems, very quickly. That was really kind of the driving factor from us, bootstrapping. Also allowed us to kind of maintain ownership of that company. The way we kind of went about it was we started off very much so doing heavy services work in the beginning, helping people with their data and manually going through and helping them process it, do the data engineering work, all of those different types of things to kind of keep the lights on. The reason the name of the company is Night Shift Development is because we were kind of working these day jobs to kind of pay bills, keep lights on, and then at night building out product.
Wow, like this is really inspiring, Tim. And yeah, majority of the time when I ask anyone about why you bootstrap, they come up with similar answers. It's about like not being under the pressure of investors, and second, yeah, like not all the time. I believe you don't need really sometimes to get funding, especially
Yeah.
if you have some, you have your runways, and like you have your customers. One thing I'm interested about, Tim, so for you, you know you are in a, the company is in a hot vertical, I can say, so everyone needs this, but there must be something that you kept hearing from customers that also encouraged you, that okay, I should continue. What I'm curious in other way, if I want to ask the question, like how did you validated that yes, there is enough market for what you're trying to do, and actually customers need this. So again, like what strategies have you used, and how you were able to know that yeah, I have product market fit actually.
Yeah, this is actually one of the interesting things. When we first started the company, it was very much so this game of, okay, we have to be secretive about the product that we're building and all these different types of things. One of the things that I've learned and that I continue to preach now today is when you've got an idea, you should talk about it all the time to everyone. And the more people you talk to, the more feedback you're going to get, and the more you're going to see, whether or not you're really solving a problem that people care about or not. um, Go out and demo, go out and show things at conferences. And that was one of the things that we did early on. I was showing early prototypes of ClearQuery at conferences, which allowed us to really drive and focus on, what things that we needed to kind of continue to build out. So getting that customer feedback really drives where your product development efforts go in the early days. And before actually have a paying customer, you're really focused on the feedback of people around you. That said, you also have to have that conviction that what you're building is the right thing. Because you will hear a lot that, I don't know that this is necessarily needed, or how is this different from something else? And you have to be able
Mhm.
to have that conviction to say, no, this path is different. And even though I'm hearing a lot of, hey, no, or I don't think this is great, or you're wasting your time type thing, I have to know that this is the right path, and we have to keep driving on that.
So it's about, I would say, persistence also as well, and perseverance, right? Um, yeah, but definitely, like this is very inspiring, Tim. I would say your journey and the success that you had, and it's a proof, I would say, that guys not always go the same route, that it's not for you, because I can see, Tim, that you choose something which is unique for your offering and for your vision and mission with the co-founder. of your company, which is great. And I think here, which is also I want to hear your opinion about. Now, when you're working, you know, in a corporate job or you have a day job, so of course, like you start to think about, okay, I need to have a leadership skill, I need to be innovative. But when you are working on your own, as we call it, baby, actually, because this company becomes your baby. So how, which leadership principles, you try to focus on and, foster within, and again, to inspire your technical team, and, you know, get this business really to this great success. So what are the key principles you have used and you have seen successful growing the company?
Yeah, the short answer there is all of them. No, I think there are a couple of key ones in particular. One, what we look for is hustle. When we're hiring, I'm looking for people that, can really, they, even if they don't necessarily have a skill set right off the bat, I have the conviction and the confidence that they will be able to go and learn that and build off on top of that. That they will be able to do what they need to do, that they're really interested and passionate about a project or something that they are involved in, and then they like solving problems in interesting ways. But there's this other big thing that we really focus on, and that's giving people the freedom and space to operate without them needing to necessarily mother may I. So if you've got an interesting idea, go and try it. We want to allow our team members to kind of go and try things and bring new ideas to the table, even if as everyone knows what the core vision is. So being super transparent is a key facet for us. Being super transparent, enabling our team so that we can all drive in the right direction. These are kind of key things that we focus on as a leadership team.
Great. And I believe Tim also, maybe if you can shed a little bit light, I hear always from founders that, the thing that made also this works for them is themselves being able to learn skills like sales and marketing and this stuff. So how important these, and especially for like technical founders like yourself, Tim. And I know from myself, because if you ask me like 10 years back or 12 years back about sales marketing, I knew nothing. So how this is very important also when starting your own company.
Yeah, one thing I always say now is CEO's number one job is sales. Yeah, technical founder, technical background, never really done sales before. So a lot of it was, learning on the fly. I think there's a lot of different sales approaches. The sales piece is the most important thing because your job is revenue at the end of the day. And especially when you're bootstrapping, revenue matters above all else. So how do we get in front of the right customers? And a lot of this boils down to, hey, I am asking and talking to people. What you'll find is when you start a company, and this is, definitely my experience, I reached out to almost everyone in my Rolodex and said, hey, I'm starting a company. Here's what I'm doing. I'd love to talk to you about it if you're interested. And everyone is willing to help out in some way or another. Whether or not they become a customer, they may become a customer, but they also may just know someone in their network that needs what you have, and that becomes a very, very important facet of all of this. Learning how to do the marketing piece is also a very, very major issue because that's where you start to scale. You have to, kind of get the sales motions down first, but then, okay, how do we market this so that we can scale this in a very effective way?
Yeah, great points. Now, I stopped to introduce these questions. Maybe they are a little bit cliche, but I'm curious also myself. So, did you have, Tim, like any idol founder in the tech space that you said, okay, like, he's or she's my idol? Did you have someone when you decided to start your journey?
I don't know if I had one specific kind of idol, but I had a lot of founders that I leaned on their experiences from as I was starting my journey. Obviously, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg are always, very interesting ones, and their founder stories are, very fascinating. In particular, there are others like, Mark Randolph, who was one of the co-founders of Netflix. You know, those are really interesting stories, and seeing how those journeys kind of played out for them is very fascinating. There's a book that I always tend to recommend that was also a big piece of my journey as it was getting started, called The Hard Thing About Hard Things. Um, but that book in particular um, just provided a lot of interesting founder stories and challenges that you'll run into, but provided a lot of good tips on how to engage and work with those challenges as you're moving through and figure out what the next best move is. I go back and refer to it all the time these days.
Yeah, it's good because you answered the second question about the book, if you would recommend, and it's a good recommendation actually. Um, like also how important, Tim, is to have a mentor as well.
Yeah, I think, it's definitely important to have outside advisors. And, whether it's, a specific mentor or it's a number of other advisors that you can lean on. For me, I had a number of folks that I had worked with in the past that had, provided some advice when, I'm running into a hard issue, when I'm running into an issue on, hey, how do I get this deal closed? I'm running into this issue with this customer, or, hey, I'm dealing with this issue with this employee. What's the right way for me to approach this? How do I help make this better? Because I'll tell you, people challenges become one of the big things when you start growing a company. And that becomes a really interesting thing, dynamic to try to navigate.
Yeah, that's great. And what's the vision or the long-term mission, let's call, Tim, for you? I mean, for the company.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to continue on our overall mission of democratizing data analytics. How do we make this simple as possible for anyone to get value from their data? We're trying to take down some of our bigger competitors, those like Tableau and Power BI, et cetera, and really start to eat up some of that market space, because we really do believe we have a differentiated solution that enables people in a very effective way to get value from their data.
Great. I get excited. I'm passionate, as I was telling you before we start, like about startups and scale ups. I think you are a scale up now, not say startup anymore. But I can see you still have the spirit of a startup founder, Tim, and a lot of things you shared today. Now, this it's not a tricky question by any mean, but is there anything that I should have discussed with you? I asked you and I missed it.
No, I think we covered a lot of ground here. A lot of good, interesting areas. I think one thing I would quickly note is you know listen, and as you're kind of, if you've got entrepreneurs on your listener list that are kind of going at this, one of the big things that I always say, because this is the hardest part for anyone, is just start. Getting off Go is the hardest part. Once you get off Go, you start to figure everything else out. You don't need to have it all figured out from the beginning. Just start and you'll figure it out as you kind of move along.
Yeah, exactly. This is something I also repeat, and I tell them, take me as example. I didn't start early enough. I did the mistake, and just go start. This is what I tell people also as well. Tim, like really, I enjoyed the conversation today. Before we close, where we can find more about you and about Night.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're interested, you can head over to clearquery.io. That's our website. You can find out more about our product and Night Shift there on the website. I am on all of the socials as Tim Tutt, so you should be able to find me across all the platforms. The one exception is on, I guess they call it X now. I am Tim F Tutt there, but pretty easy to find me around.
Yeah, honestly speaking, usually when I put in the show notes, of course, I will put the company URL, and I put the LinkedIn profile only because I believe, like it's kind of a professional. X I use, but I'm not so active there, honestly. So
Same.
unless the guest asks me, can we put also like the profile of Twitter or X, whatever we want to call it? I said, well, of course, like I have no issues. But yeah, so LinkedIn also is the place for me where people can find me
Yes.
more. Of course, I will put the links in the show note. And again, Tim, thank you very much for being with me today. And I enjoyed the conversation, and I'm sure the audience, both who are interested in data analytics, they will find a lot of knowledge in that, and of course, the bigger audience for me, which are entrepreneurs and startup founders, they will also find a lot of useful information. And this is how we close the episodes usually. So thank you for everyone who tuned in today. If you are a first time visitor here, thank you for passing by. I hope that you become a loyal fan. And for the loyal fans, thank you again for all your feedbacks, for your messages, and for your recommendations and suggestions. And if you are interested to be on the show, like you have this super cool idea, you have built something and you are not finding the space of the PR there, so please reach out so we can arrange a session. We can do a recording, same as Tim was on the show today. Time zone is not a difference, so I have audience globally. I can say this, I can claim that. And yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. We'll meet again very soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me, Mehmet.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.